everyone, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome to the channel. My name's Erin, and my husband Nolan and I are currently ensigns in the United States Coast Guard. We graduated from the Coast Guard Academy in May of last year, so in the class of 2022, and now we're both stationed on cutters in Virginia. We make videos on military lifestyle and faith to share the lessons we've learned and encourage you to keep looking up. Today, I'm going to be giving you a recap of my first patrol on Coast Guard Cutter Spencer, which is a 270-foot medium endurance cutter in Portsmouth, and share what I've learned and what I've experienced. And next week, Nolan is going to hop on here from the student engineer side of things. I'm currently a deck watch officer, so if you want to see the engineering stuff, make sure you subscribe to the channel down below so you don't miss Nolan's video. And while you're at it, go ahead and give this video a huge thumbs up. Before I jump into my first patrol, I wanted to back up a little bit and tell you why I put this boat as the first one on my list in the first place. So with Colocation, Nolan and I were looking at where we could go and geographically be together, but also not be on completely opposite schedules. You're usually on opposite schedules when two people are on different boats on the same pier. So in Little Creek, for example, which is where Nolan's boat is, there are two 210-foot boats. When one is out, the other one's in, and vice versa. So although that's still considered co-location because you're stationed in the same place, you might as well be in completely two different locations because you're never going to see each other. So we were looking at places where there were two different piers still close by, but where we had a better chance of not being on two opposite schedules. That's why I put in for base Portsmouth and Nolan put in for boats in Little Creek. And that's exactly what we got. Nolan got a 210-foot boat, he got an engineering spot, and then for me, I ended up in Portsmouth on one of the 9 270s there. There's quite a few boats in Portsmouth. After figuring out where geographically we wanted to be, it then came down to the decision of picking DWO or Stu-Eng, so deck watch officer or student engineer. My first year at the academy, I was a mechanical engineer. Although I probably could have scraped by with a lot of help, it just wasn't for me. You don't really have any major specific classes your first year at the academy, and so it was pretty easy to switch. And I just remember sitting in the first year capstone presentations my freshman year, which are like your senior projects, and I just didn't have any interest in what they were presenting on. So that's what encouraged me to switch to operations research, which honestly wasn't really my thing either. Again, I think it's super fascinating in general, but when it comes down to it, I just didn't have a deep interest in it. So anyway, when it comes to picking DWO or Stu-Eng, I wasn't super passionate about engineering like Nolan was and a lot of my classmates were. And since there's a ton of DWO spots versus only a fewer number of engineering spots, I figured I'd just pick DWO because I had a better chance of getting the boat that I wanted. So really for me, when I was looking at the 9 cutters in Portsmouth, I was really looking at the class of 2021 and which of my friends were on the different cutters. And so the cutter I ended up picking, I had a Christian brother on that boat already in the class of 21, and so I decided to put his boat first, and then the boats after that were the same thing. Also on 270s, you definitely learn a lot. You see drug interdiction, a lot of migrant interdiction, you're doing fisheries boarding, search and rescue, and then this last patrol I actually went to Africa, so I even got to see the international relations side of things. And so you're not really closing many doors if you pick being on a 270. So again, I didn't really have any passion into one specific career path, so I just figured pick a boat where I could see a bunch of different things and then also, learn those division officer skills that you need to be a good leader. On a 270, you have 4 different departments. You have engineering, which again, Nolan will touch on next week. You have support, which includes your health services technicians, you have your culinary specialists, your cooks, you have yeomen who are doing all your personnel paperwork and stuff like that, and then you have your storekeepers, your SKs, who are making sure that the cutter has everything that they need in order to do their job successfully. So those people are kind of the backbone of the ship. If they didn't do their job, we couldn't do ours. So that's support. So again, engineering support. Then we have deck department. So deck department consists of some of the bosun mates, and then also all of the deckies. The deckies are non-rates, so those young enlisted members who have yet to decide which rate they want to specialize in. And the deckies, we call them deck force because that's exactly what they are. They're a force. They're the ones who are sanding, scraping, painting, doing all the hardcore maintenance on the outside of the skin of the ship so that the cutter's in good shape to go out and complete the mission. And then the last department is operations department, and that's where most of your deck watch officers go to be division officers. So there's a few divisions in operations. On my boat, we have it split up with the ETs and ITs. So those are the ones who are doing the hardware and software on all your electronics. They're the experts on file management and even simple things that you wouldn't think have a huge impact, like making sure the printer's running. That's a really big deal when it comes down to it. So they're kind of in charge of all that stuff. So ETs and ITs. After that, you have the OSs and ISs. So they're really the experts in any sort of intel or formation steaming or anything like that. You have the gunner's mates and the MEs, so the maritime enforcement specialists, and they are really the experts in law enforcement and making sure that our weapons are ready for whatever comes our way. And then we have the nav division that's composed of the 3 navigation bosun mates. So on my boat, I'm in charge of the BMs, so I am in charge of navigation division, so they call me the assistant navigator, or ANAV for short. And then one of our JOs left early, so I also took over the MEs. So I was the LEO, or law enforcement officer, on our boat. So that is my job on the boat. I'm the LEO and the ANAV. On top of that, we then have collaterals. So for example, on my boat, I'm the education services officer. So I'm in charge of helping people pursue higher education or figuring out the service-wide exam. I'm also the public affairs officer. So I facilitate media releases and imagery and that sort of stuff. And then I'm also the lay leader on my boat. So I lead divine services on Sundays. So those are my collaterals. All the JOs on the boat have different collaterals. You have the morale officer, you have the ship store, training officer. There's a bunch of different jobs on top of your title job. So those are collaterals. So again, you have your job, collaterals, and then on top of this, does that sound busy already? Yes, but just wait. So that covers my job and collaterals, but now let's talk about qualifications. So on top of those things, I also stand duty. To be qualified means that you have stood enough time as a break-in. As a break-in, you are shadowing somebody that's qualified in that specific position. And then in order to qualify, you have to shadow a certain amount of times and then also pass a test or oral board. On cutters, everyone is required to have a basic and advanced damage control qualification, meaning that you have basic firefighting skills and overall shipboard awareness. It's super, super important to know your different escape routes or ways to de-water or de-smoke a space. So everyone is a firefighter on the boat. That's what we say in the Coast Guard. So we have to have those qualifications. And then additionally, as a deck watch officer, I stand import OOD, officer of the deck, which basically means that I'm in charge of the import duty section and I act as captain's direct representative when he's not on board. And then underway, I stand underway officer of the deck, which means that I'm up on the bridge, driving the boat, and overseeing all of operations. Before you qualify as an OOD, you have to get a few other qualifications first. So you have to stand helm lookout and be qualified as helm lookout. Quartermaster of the watch. So the quartermaster of the watch is in charge of the logs on the bridge. They're there for making pipes and emergency pipes if something happens. They're going to be an extra lookout if we need an extra lookout. They're kind of the OOD's right-hand man. So in order to get to breaking in OOD, I had to qualify in all these other positions first, so I know their job and can oversee them properly. So once you have those basic expected qualifications, helm and lookout, QMO, and then OOD, there are a few more that you can pursue, but that'll be something I get into in future videos. So let's go back to June of last year when I first reported on board. The first couple weeks are a whirlwind. You're coming in, the old JOs are moving out, you're trying to get your pass down for your specific job and figure out what your division responsibilities are. You're trying to start your qualifications because you're not going to be very helpful to the cutter until you've qualified and are actively contributing to a watch section. And then you're also simply trying to meet people and get your bearings of what the expectations are for your certain command, because it'll be different based on which cutter you're on and what your CO's philosophies are. And of course, you're also trying to figure out the basic things, like how long you'll have to be at work each day, or who is going to be helpful in helping you get qualified and who isn't so much. So there's a lot to figure out those first couple weeks. I came home each day and my brain was just exhausted. tired. I have a really long drive since Nolan. Again, we're a little ways apart, and so Nolan is close. We decided to live towards the Virginia Beach side, and then I have the longer commute to Portsmouth. On those drives home, those first couple weeks, I was pretty tired. Luckily, from my summer experiences, I did have a bit of knowledge under my belt and had earned some qualifications. So things like basic damage control, I just had to recert, which just means I had to take the test instead of getting all the sign-offs. And then I already had helm and lookout, so I was able to go right to breaking in QMO. So that was really nice. If you're a cadet at the academy watching this, definitely take advantage of your summer experiences and getting those qualifications. Even if your cutter doesn't necessarily just accept your letter for their letter, still it's good to have the knowledge and the experience, and it makes the process so much quicker once you actually get to your boat. So take those experiences seriously and don't waste opportunities and the time that you have to study and understand and to ask your questions. Expectations are a little different depending on what cutter you're on, like I mentioned, but typically at a unit, you're going to be on what's called a 1 in 3 schedule until you get qualified. And this means that you're standing duty once every 3 days. So it can be a lot. I mean, you have 24-hour duty, so you're sleeping on the boat every 3rd day, and then underway, you're standing every 3rd watch, which the watch sections are broken up into 4 hours. So that means there's 6 watches in a day, and you're standing every 3rd. So you have 2 watches per day. So if you stand the morning 04 to 08 watch, then you're also standing the afternoon 16 to 20 in the evening watch. So that's a lot of duty, and it gets old really fast. So getting qualified is not only good for you because you'll have more time, you're going to have more time off when you get in port, and then also it's so much better for the crew because, again, you're going to be an actively contributing member. So I had 5 weeks in port before getting underway. I reported, like I said, in June, and then we got underway, I think, July 30th. So about 5 weeks, I was standing those in port 1 in 3s. Luckily, Nolan and I were on the same 1 in 3 schedule, so at least so we had 2 nights together, and then 1 night on the boat, 2 nights together, but that's just a lot of duty. So for 5 weeks, Nolan got underway before I did, but for 5 weeks, that's what I was doing. So by the time I got underway, I had a basic understanding of import OD, and my goal leaving was to get that qualification by the time we returned so that I didn't have to be on 1 in 3s anymore. You can work on import quals when you're underway, so that's what my goal was. The trick really to qualifications is not wasting any of your duty days. Maybe I should make another video on tips to getting qualified quickly. But really, just you're there for 24 hours. No, you're not going to spend every single second studying, but it's up to you to seek the knowledge and to seek the people who are going to help you out. They're not going to come to you and be like, hey, let's get these sign-offs done. You're going to have to seek them out, present them with the knowledge that you've learned, and actively ask questions. It's not going to come easy, but yeah, maybe I'll make a video on that. If you want me to make a video on tips to getting qualified quickly, leave a comment down below. So back to my experience, it was crazy too because the week after I got there, my boat was going through Tista, which stands for Tailored Ships Training Availability. And basically what it is you're running a ton of drills, import first, and being evaluated on your procedures and your response to certain situations. And then you have a few days of underway Tista as well, where you go out to sea and they evaluate different evolutions out at sea. So this was really crazy to get thrown into Tista the first couple of weeks, but it was also really good, I think, looking back, because although it was trial by fire, I learned so much so fast, and my brain hurt, but overall, I think it helps in getting qualified quickly too. The first couple days underway, one of my first conning evolutions was a fueling at sea, and that's basically where you come up alongside a big fueling rig and you shoot over a line, and then they pull over the hose, the fueling hose. So you're 200 feet from another boat consistently. So I was driving the boat for that. That was pretty crazy to have as one of my first conning evolutions. But I'll say after having that one under my belt, it wasn't nearly as nerve-wracking to more up to a standstill pier. So anyway, it was kind of good that Tista happened the first week, but still crazy. So after Tista, sometime in those first 5 weeks I was there, we got underway for a District 5 patrol originally. So we got underway July 30th or something like that, and we headed out off the coast of Virginia, off the coast of Boston, District 5, and we were mostly doing just fisheries. That's really kind of all you do up there unless you get a search and rescue case. So we send a boarding team out to board fishing vessels to see if they're maintaining all of their equipment, keeping up with safety regulations, not overfishing if they have all their licenses, that sort of stuff. So that's what our mission started out as. But then I think within like the first week or two of doing that, we got diverted down south to the Florida Straits and in the Windward Pass, which is kind of down by Cuba and Haiti, to support the Coast Guard's Migrant Interdiction Mission. So right now, a lot of migration is happening down there, and so that's where many Coast Guard assets are. And so basically, we'll come up on a migrant boat or get intel from one of our air assets, and we'll stop their boat. We'll send the small boats out, and we will transfer all of the migrants off of their really dangerous, usually in overcrowded sailboats, and bring them on board. And then eventually a smaller Coast Guard cutter, usually a fast response cutter, will pick them up and take them back to their country to be repatriated. This is it's a hard mission because just you see the desperation of these people out at sea and how badly they want to escape their country and come to the United States, where we have so many freedoms, I think, that we take advantage of. So it's really hard to see that and to bring them on board and just to hear about what they've faced, and to physically see, like, we've come along boats where, one, like I said, they're overcrowded. There are way too many people on these boats. They don't have life jackets. They don't have any safety equipment. They're usually sailboats, and so just dangerous. They don't really have an out if things go south or if the seas get rough. So they're usually sick, seasick. Their clothing is usually really worn down. So it's a hard mission, but it's also very important. We are saving lives. Like I said, the chances of them even making it to the United States are slim based on their circumstances on these boats. So it's important what we're doing. It's hard, but overall, supporting that mission and finding a better way for them to go about bettering their circumstances is crucial. So that's what we kind of got diverted to go do down south. Our port calls ended up being in Key West was our first port call, and then we had 2 stops in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. So in Gitmo is what we call it. You have to stay on the Navy base, but they have a nice gym, nice beach, everything that you could need. In Key West, my friend Jordan and I, we went to the southernmost point, ate dinner at a few restaurants, got ice cream, good coffee, Cuban coffee queen, pretty good. So that's kind of a bit about our port calls. My friend Daniel and I walked around to look at some of the history around Key West. So yeah, that's what we were doing on our first patrol. And then on our way back up to Portsmouth, we had what's called DLQs, which is deck landing qualifications. So this is when we have basically a lot of training with the helos. So they'll do landings for training for the pilots and then also people on the cutters. That's kind of it as far as what we were doing. Luckily, we really didn't have too many migrant cases. If you have watched the news recently, you may have seen like Coast Guard cutter Laguerre found a boat with 400 migrants, like one sailboat with 400 migrants. And that is insane. I don't know how, but the most that we had on deck at one time was like 15, 18 people. So we got lucky because down there, the cutters are all swamped. They have like 100 to 200 migrants at least, and they're sending buoy tenders down there just to be holding platforms. So we got really lucky, and thankfully, since we got lucky, I really had a lot of time to focus on my qualifications. So studying for import and underway OD definitely does have some overlap. You have to get advanced DC for both, and a lot of the information that you need for advanced damage control is helpful. I mean, it's all helpful for your qualification as an OD, for understanding how emergency procedures go, how different systems work on the boat. I was really actively pursuing those qualifications, got my advanced qualification first, and then again, my original goal was just to get import OD. Usually you need a bit more experience out at sea before you can get your underway OD qualification, and so I was actively pursuing that one too, and broke in QMO pretty quickly and was standing a lot of QMO watch, but it wasn't necessarily my goal going into the patrol to get that qualification. I just wanted the import qual so that I had as much time with Nolan when I got back. And so I was very much tracking on that, getting all the sign-offs that I needed. You have to go through certain evolutions in order to get your qualification, so it just takes time. Like, you're not going to be doing those evolutions every single day. So it is just somewhat of putting in the time and making sure you see different things. So I was tracking to get import, that patrol, that was really my goal. But then we actually had 2 OCS ensigns on my boat who had gotten there 6 months before we did. So they got there probably November of 2021. And I think them being there and them being like slightly ahead of me in the underway OD qualification process really helped. I think coming from the academy, you go through navigation classes each year. I mean, you're doing paper charting, you're learning about weather, you're learning about maneuvering boards. You're doing all of that stuff, and back at school, it didn't necessarily click as easy because I wasn't hands-on doing it. But I think for me, what I realized is that I thrive in a hands-on environment. And once I got out at sea, all that stuff that I learned the past 4 years clicked and fell into place really, really quickly. So I ended up just kind of jumping in with those two ensigns where they were at in their qualification process, helping them understand the stuff that I had strengths in and them helping me with their strengths. So I was set up for success in that sense, kind of jumped in with them, got more evolutions, and was really understanding things quicker than I expected to. And so at some point, probably a little over halfway through our first patrol, I realized like maybe it is a possibility for me to get qualified in my first patrol. And so I started working a little harder, spending a little more time on the bridge, spending more time down in the engine room to understand how things work down there in the Combat Information Center, CIC, to figure out how the intel side of things work. Because again, as the OD, your job is really to have situational awareness of everything going on the cutter so you can properly lead people through different evolutions. I kind of realized halfway through, like, maybe this is a possibility. It was going to be a long shot because, again, a lot of it too is just getting different experiences. So you want to see a certain number of evolutions. You really want to feel comfortable and confident up on the bridge, and that just takes time. Simply put, it takes time. It also takes a lot of time to gain your command's trust. The captain is responsible for everything that goes down on that boat. If we were to run into somebody or if there was to be a casualty, it all comes back onto captain. And so he's not just going to throw somebody he doesn't trust and hasn't seen in action up on the bridge without another qualified person. So it takes a long time too, just to get enough evolutions to gain their trust and for them to see what you know and to feel truly confident in having you up there alone. I was just hoping to get enough evolutions in to prove to captain and to feel confident in myself to be able to respond in case of any different scenario. I really put in the work there, studied a lot. I think overall, having a really trusting command, not being very busy with operations, having those 2 JOs ahead of me, and then having a lot of break-ins so I had time to study. Like, all those things combined, I think, is what led to me eventually, spoiler, I got qualified, underway OD, so I was fully qualified by the time I came back from my first patrol, which was super awesome, really good feeling. I'm very thankful for the way that things lined up. And then I also just wanted to talk about God and all of this too. Of course, I mean, that's just the heart of our channel, is to share where God shows up in our normal daily work lives. So throughout the whole time too, I'm thinking, okay, this isn't normal. Like, people don't usually get qualified like in their first patrol. Like, I at one point was like, I just won't try for it because it's not what people usually do. And I think that's when I started to think about the fact that, one, all things are possible with God, and think of all the things that lined up and were in my favor to get qualified fast and how I wanted to take advantage of those since he put them in front of me. So I thought about that one. It was also an interesting season because, contrary to at the academy when I had like an hour each day to sit and be in the Word, it was a different season with God getting underway. It was really busy, and I didn't necessarily have the same luxury, relaxed time that I had with him at school. But I kind of learned that that's okay. Like, different seasons are going to look different. Sometimes we have the time to sit and spend hours in the Bible, and sometimes it might just be while you're washing your hands, you say a quick prayer and have one verse a week that you try to memorize. So it can look different, and there's a time for everything under the sun, as it says in Ecclesiastes. So I really was trying to focus on working for the Lord, and I think through working for the Lord, He provided, and he gave me the confidence that I needed, because it's scary. I mean, to be up on the bridge in the middle of the night when it's completely pitch black and you can't see anything in front of you, like, that's kind of terrifying, especially if you're brand new. And I especially before my board, before I was taking my test to get qualified, I kept repeating to myself, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. So that's what I really tried to do, is just trust in the Lord, lean not on my own understanding. Like, there were going to be times when I didn't know what to do, but I had to trust my training and then trust that God would guide. And if he brought me to something, he was going to lead me through something. So that's how I kind of felt like he put all the pieces into place, and it was up to me whether I wanted to step into that and honor him in my work that way, or if I was just going to say, like, it's not normal, I don't want to do it. So I really think it was God who one, set up the opportunity for me to get qualified, but then also gave me the confidence and the strength to step into that calling. So that's kind of a bit about like the faith side of my first patrol. It's hard to be out at sea for so long, and my first patrol wasn't actually too long. I think it was only 56 days. My last one was closer to 90. But it was hard, especially to say goodbye to Nolan. Nolan and I being on different schedules, like he left way before I did, so it had been like total of 3 months before we saw each other again, and it's just hard to miss people. It's hard to be stuck on, a 270-foot in length platform for so long with the same people. You step on each other's toes a bit, and it becomes really mundane, and you lose drive sometimes. But that first patrol, God really used it to excite me to honor him in my work. I think, too, it's really easy and hard sometimes, but in this sense, it's easy to recognize God out at sea because of the creation around you. Again, in the middle of the night, yes, you're staring into the dark abyss, and that's like terrifying, but also you have like the incredible stars above you on clear nights, and just the waves. This last patrol, the verse that stuck into my mind so much was that, like, mightier than the waves is his love for you, because our seas were sucky, but mightier than the waves is his love for you. So it's a very like practical way to see him at work. I did definitely feel guilty sometimes for not spending as much time with God as I had been the year before. And another reflection that I had after the first patrol was that just because you're not necessarily putting as much in to your relationship with God, it doesn't mean that he's gone anywhere. Like, he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And his love for us isn't determined by how well we perform, how much of the Bible we know, how much time we're spending with him. Yes, he wants us to spend time with him, but it doesn't have to look a certain way thanks to the grace of Jesus. And I think it's easy to get into that rut of, like, if you're not going to church this amount of times or reading the Bible this amount of times, like, then you're failing as a Christian. But that is not true by any means. As long as you're recognizing him and walking life with him, that he's still pouring the same amount of love into your life, and he still loves you just as much. You're still a child of God, and even if you stray away, just thinking of the story of the prodigal son, if you stray away, he is still right there waiting for you to return. So I did feel a little bit of conviction because I was pursuing qualifications over pursuing God at moments, and I had to check myself and really make sure I was doing it for the Lord and not for my own glory. So I had to check myself there, but thankfully, like, every time I came back, I realized God is right there, and that just made me so thankful and humble, and it helped me make myself less and make him more. So those are just some of the reflections from my first patrol. If you have any questions specifically on the Coast Guard side of the house, like I don't know, what's the food like, or like what are specific operations like, I would love to share that. And sometimes being in the Coast Guard, it's hard to like take a step outside of it and think about what people on the outside don't know. So if you have any questions like that, please let me know in the comments down below, or on Instagram. You can DM us on our Erin and Nolan Instagram, which I will put the tag to here. So please, we'd love to communicate with you. We want this to be a conversational channel. We don't just want it to be us talking at you. Yes, we have things to share, but we want to share what you want to know. So ask those questions down below if you have any questions about long distance, dual military. We'd love to hear those too. And then, as I mentioned, please subscribe to this channel, because next week Nolan's going to hop on here and share about his experience as an engineer. It's different than mine. There's different stuff that goes on down in the engine room, so subscribe to make sure you don't miss that. Keep looking up, keep looking to the Lord for your strength, and walking throughout life with him. We will see you next time. Bye, guys.